What's up guys, I'm Uriel. Now in this video, we're going to be going over the 4 common mistakes people make when building a website on Elementor. Now this is going to be a really insightful video. I put in a lot of effort, so if you guys could squash the like button for the YouTube algorithm, that would definitely help me out a lot and the channel. Now if you guys haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of my videos, because I come out with a lot of stuff that you're probably not seeing anywhere else, so you definitely don't want to miss out. Now I hope you guys really enjoy this video. So the first common mistake that I always see is people don't set up their site settings whenever they're starting an Elementor website. I feel like that's super important because it just makes your process of building the website a lot faster. So what we need to do is go into any Elementor page and go into the editor. And then over here on the top left corner, go into site settings. And then here we have our site settings. And these are the ones that I'm talking about that need to be adjusted before we even start building our website on Elementor. So first one is our global colors. So we definitely always need to set that up. That's always super important. So I'm not going to get too into this. I don't want to make this video really long, so I'm just going to give you a little overview. So primary is just your primary heading. Secondary is your subheading on your website. Just to give you an example, so my primary heading is this here, and my secondary heading is this one here. Okay, and then my text are basically going to be your paragraph area, and then your accent is going to be your buttons and that sort of stuff. Okay, so let me go ahead and go back here, and then we have our global fonts. So you always want to set this up. Now for me, I am using the default font for this website, so it probably doesn't even look that way, but it's always great to have your font that you want to be using for your entire website. Like I said, primary is going to be your primary heading, and then secondary is your subheading. Text is just your paragraph text, and accent are your buttons and that sort of stuff. So I will have a video on this more in depth on what each one is about. So I'll have that out soon. So that's pretty much just a brief overview of that. I'm gonna go ahead and go back here. So that's always good to set up. And then our theme style. So you can set this up, but I wouldn't recommend it because you do have to go to your settings, and you basically have to turn off your default colors and fonts in the settings page here. So I wouldn't do this, just because, like I said, it's going to turn off the Elementor default colors and the Elementor default fonts, which are pretty much these here, and you won't be able to save colors or fonts, and it's just not necessary. And it's the same for basically all of this. So I honestly always skip this. And then we have our site identity, which just is pretty important, but usually this is set up. I mean, this is the home page. So I definitely always recommend that you do have your site name and your site description. For me, I mean, this is just a test website, so that's just how that is. And if you do want to set up background, you can set up a background for your entire website. And you can also set up a mobile browser background. That's usually like the search area on your mobile phone. I don't know if you know what part I'm talking about, but it tells you right here anyway. Now we have our layout settings. Now these are really important. They're always overlooked. I mean, I used to not even really do this, but now I do, and it saves me a bunch of time. I don't got to set the width for each section. I can just do it from here. Usually it's going to be the same. I mean, my header does have a different width, but that's always just my header sometimes. But so if we were to just move this around, you notice that it would start adjusting. Now just note that for my website it is 1280, but I usually like to leave it at 1140, which is a default anyway. But for this particular website, I did do 1280. That's why we have it at that. So that's always super important to set that up first, the width of your section. And then we have our widget space. I usually don't touch this. I always leave it at 20, but this part is pretty important as well, in case you want to adjust the spacing between your text and your buttons and pretty much any element. So as you can tell, if I move this to 50, you notice that my text here, my buttons, and all of my widgets start to space out. That's always super important. So you always want to make sure that you adjust that appropriate to your design. All right, and then usually I leave my default page layout at, I mean, it just depends. I always leave it at Elementor full width, or if I'm barely starting a new website, I don't have my header built out yet, then I just leave it at canvas for now. And then these other settings I don't really go over too much. I don't really use those as much. Okay, so then we have our breakpoints here. Now these are super important. This can definitely be overlooked sometimes as well. So this just, you want to go over your breakpoints, and this is pretty important when you're having issues with your website. Let's just say at a certain size. And what I mean by size, I mean, if we go into here, let me just, actually, I think I already had another page open up. Yeah, I can just remove this one. So when I'm talking about size, I'm talking about the size of your screen, the size of your device, the width in particular. So as you can tell, whenever I'm moving this down, there's a certain breakpoint where it's going to switch to my tablet. And you'll notice it's usually about 10, 20, 10 something, I believe. There we go. So it's about 10 something. And I think I have it at, it's at 1024 actually. So let's say for some odd reason, I want the tablet to start maybe at 1200, just because I'm having an issue where when it gets to 1200, my header is moving around not in the right direction, and something not so good is happening, right? So what I would suggest doing is, and I just noticed I don't have my menu on here, so I got to fix that later on. So basically you would go in here and move that to 1200, just change that to 1200. And then over here, if you're having issues with your mobile breakpoint, and let's say you want your mobile to begin a lot sooner, maybe at 800, you can switch that to 800. I'm just giving you guys a brief overview of this. I think I do have a video on this, or I will have a video on this. Actually, I'm coming out with the course that's pretty much going to be all about responsive design on Elementor. So I will have that out soon. So it will definitely be a lot more in depth, and hopefully you guys get some value out of that. So I'm gonna go ahead and just actually discard this. Now let me just go back to my settings here in case I missed something, which I think I did, I believe. Okay, so we went to layout and then lightbox here. Now you can usually adjust this. This is just your standard lightbox. Whenever someone clicks on an image, if you have that set up, you can go ahead and adjust this. I usually don't adjust this too much. And then we have custom CSS, which not really necessary, and all this other stuff isn't really that necessary either. So the second mistake that I see people doing is they use a necessary amount of columns. And let me go ahead and show you what I mean by that. So Elementor has a great example of not using that many columns. So I went ahead and just used one of their templates here. And the sections that I did want to highlight was mainly this one here. You see how within this column, they didn't add another inner column, well, probably because they can't either. But you see how they ended up just using their element, and they just extended the width of this, and they added a border. And that is a great example of not using that many columns. I know that they are using their column and then an inner column. So let me go ahead and show you guys the mistake that I see people doing. And let me show you how you should go about building it the right way. So I'm actually going to go down here, and I'm going to create a new section. So I'm going to have about 4 columns just to show you guys an example of something not to do. So let's say you're gonna have some services box, which is what I usually see a lot. People have the service box, So I'm gonna go ahead and just type in box icon. It usually just comes up, or image box, icon box. One of the two is fine. So this is what I see a lot of people do. They do this, and they add their boxes here, and they set up their services and everything. Now this is generally, I mean, it's an easy way to do it, but it's not the right way that Elementor actually recommends. The right way to do it is actually do it within one column. And let me go ahead and show you guys how we go about doing that. So I'm going to move all of these into one column. And then I'm going to go ahead and remove all of the other columns that we're not using. But then you're telling me, well, this doesn't look right. How do I adjust this? Well, it's very simple. We need to start using inline positioning. So head over to Advanced and then go into Positioning. And this is where we have our width, and this is what we need to set up. So we can either set this to inline or custom. Now, I do tend to use inline and then also custom as well. So it just depends on what I'm doing, really. So I'm going to go ahead and set that to inline. But as you can tell, now that it's set to inline, it's not really at the right spot where I want it. I want it kind of more, I want it kind of the width to be a little bit shorter so then everything can fit. So we actually need to use custom. So this is where custom comes into play, and we can kind of move this wherever we want. Now, what we need to do, instead of just, going and trying to figure it out where all these are going to fit, and, and going over here and pasting it all over and see if they fit properly. Now, I know that it's usually about 250 around there, but we can just do some simple math. So we go in here and we see that it's set to the default, which is usually 1140. That's the default width for your section. That is what we set it to earlier. If you guys do remember, that's why that does come in handy, knowing the default width of your section. Now all we need to do is just do a little math, and then we can determine basically what we need to set the size for every box. So we have 4 elements. We just need to divide 4 by 1140, and then we need to add some little space in between each box, because we are going to need a space. So I'd say maybe about 20 pixels in between. That's 20, 40, 60, 80. So we got about 80, so about 80 pixels of space. I know that a lot of these settings can be a headache, but trust me, you really want to master Elementor, and once you get your head wrapped around it, it's just gonna, building websites is gonna be so much easier, guys. So I'm definitely gonna have a course coming out on this. I know that I've been mentioning it probably throughout this video, and I definitely recommend you watch that course, because I am gonna dive deeper into these topics. So we're gonna set this to 265. So go into your icon box, go into positioning, and custom, we're going to set this to 265. And then what we're going to do is, instead of going into every single one and adding that width, we're just going to go ahead and copy it, because that is so much easier. We're just going to copy it, and then we're just going to paste the style. There we go, and there we go. Now, this is pretty good. I mean, you can go ahead and adjust it, maybe make it 275, if you don't want that much spacing. But once you have your size set up for your boxes, now we just need to go ahead and align everything. So go ahead and click on your column here, click on your main column, and that's where the vertical alignment and the horizontal alignment come into play, mainly the horizontal alignment. So what we want to do, as I'm sure you've probably tinkered with this, you've clicked on this and you probably go either start or center. Most of the time everyone just goes straight to center, right? But we have these other options here, and these are super useful. Space between, space around, and space evenly. Space between is going to add space between these here, you see, and it's going to make everything more even, but like throughout the spacing in between. So anyway, so if we have space around, it's going to go ahead and add the space on each side. It's going to add it on each side and in between as well. And then we have space evenly, and it's just going to space everything out evenly on each side and in between. But I usually like to do space between, and that's always perfect. So like I said, I'm not going to go into this too much because I don't want to make this video too long. I mean, I feel like the video is already going to be pretty long. I will have more videos on this in the future. I'm sure you've probably seen this before, because I've definitely covered this on my channel between videos. So the third Elementor mistake that I see people do is the spacing. So I've noticed on a lot of websites, there tends to be either a lot of spacing or barely any spacing at all. And everything's just really clunched together or super spaced out. So you always want to have a consistent spacing all around your websites. Obviously, for some sections, you may have different spacing depending on the graphic or what that may be, right? And I'll show you guys a few examples. So on my website here, you'll notice that, let me go ahead and click on this section here. Notice that I have it set to 100, but at the top I have it set to 0, but just because there's already spacing above here. As you can tell, that we already have that spacing, which is about 100 pixels here. And if I were to click on this top section, you notice, like I said, from the top it is 100, but then I have 30. But like I said, we have the spacing from this image, so that is kind of the reason why. But I usually like to have 100 for the top and 100 for the bottom. Now, if we go down here, we'll also notice that we have 100 from the top and 100 from the bottom, and this section as well. 100 from the top and 100 from the bottom. Pretty consistent all around. Now, my footer, like I said, it just kind of depends on the section. The footer, you can adjust those a little bit differently, but you can also set them up to 100 on the top and 100 at the bottom pixels. So, and for mobile, I've seen this a lot. For mobile, people tend to have a lot of space or barely any space at all between their sections. And obviously, you want to have the consistent same spacing between your elements. That is usually set for you by default, so I wouldn't even really touch the spacing too much when it comes to your elements. Sometimes, obviously, you want to have your subheading a little closer to your heading, which that is pretty common, so that's fine. But everything else, we want to leave a consistent spacing. Now, let me go into mobile here. And I usually like to do, just so then you guys know, I like to do 50 from the top and 50 from the bottom. When I say 50, I mean 50 pixels, just so then you guys don't get confused on that part there. So I'm going to click on this section here just to give you an example. As you can tell, I'm doing 50 there, 50 pixels. And then I'm also doing 50 pixels here as well. And then another thing that I did notice as well that people do, and you will kind of notice the difference here. You know what? And I also did 50 pixels above and 50 pixels at the bottom for this section here. But another thing that I did notice, and as you can tell, there tends to be a little bit of a difference here, right? And I did this on purpose. You notice that this section, at least on mobile, each side is set to 20, as you can tell from the left, and the right is set to 20, and that's pretty consistent. Sometimes I see people, they don't have any spacing on each side, and they have their elements or their columns super close to the edges here, and that is definitely does not look great. So I always like to have 20 from each side, sometimes even 10. But let me go in here and set this to 20, and you can pretty much see the difference on this as well, right? I know for this part, I think there's just a little issue going on here, probably just a little bug there. But it's all pretty consistent. Now let me go ahead and go into the website, and it's gonna load up on mobile here. Now, I know that I have the spacing above here, but that's just because I had a header there. But as you can tell, everything else on mobile, the spacing seems to be pretty consistent. I know on this one, for some reason, looks a little bit less here, but that's just how it is for right now for some reason. But as you can tell, everything is usually pretty consistent when it comes to the spacing. It's all pretty consistent, except for my footer there. But that's what I'm talking about. You want to have a pretty consistent spacing. I don't know why something's going on with this, but my spacing isn't right for some reason here. Maybe I have this set to no gap. I don't know. But I'll have to check that out later. But usually you just want a consistent spacing on that. And then just for a good example, I wanted to show you Apple. Apple's website is always a great example for design. It's very simple, very clean. And as you can tell, most of their spacing is pretty consistent. I don't know the spacing here. It's probably about 40 or 50 pixels. Looks more like 40 pixels or 30. But It's usually pretty consistent. I know right here they did make something a little bit different, but you will notice, like I said, some sections it just depends on what they're using. So as you can tell here, since these images I can tell affect the spacing, that's why they did it this way. It's just these two sections. But if we were to move, for instance, this section is basically the same as this one. You notice the same amount of spacing, and this section is equivalent to this one, has the same amount of spacing there, except for this part. And then here it's the same spacing from this one here. It's just that this image is probably propping a little bit down. And then we have the same spacing here, same consistent spacing from there, and it's usually pretty consistent when it comes to the spacing. I know, like I said, it just depends on the section, but you want to have consistent spacing all around. Some sections can be a little bit different depending on the section, if you have an image or whatever that may be. So I just wanted to go over that, just to kind of show you guys an example there. And yeah, like I said, I'm even looking at it on desktop, and basically the spacing is pretty consistent all around. Obviously, those you do have to factor in the images. Sometimes they're different sizes and you have different spacings, but we want every box to be obviously the same size. So that's kind of why they did it that way. The spacing is always pretty consistent there, as you can tell. So the last and definitely not least, because this one is pretty important, and I see a lot of people make this mistake. I see it on tons of websites, and most likely they're WordPress websites. I mean, that's what I assume, because I tend to see that issue out a lot. So the issue is here, as you can tell, for your copyright text, we have the wrong year. And this is an easy fix, and for some reason it's overlooked a lot. I don't know if people just don't look into it or they don't know how to do it, but it's a simple fix, and Elementor Pro makes it super easy for you to do it. But if you don't have Elementor Pro, I'll show you guys how to do it without Elementor Pro as well. So let me go ahead and cover Elementor Pro first, just because that is the easiest and the fastest. So head over to your wherever you have your footer, and wherever you want to go ahead and add the year. So what we're going to do here is, first of all, we're going to copy this because we're still going to use this. And then we're just going to use our dynamic tags. And we're going to click on this, and it's pretty cool here. We're just going to click on current date. And then let's go ahead and click on this. And we're going to go into custom. And then, as you can tell, we have the date, but we're only going to do year. So we're just going to remove everything else, and we're just going to set it to Y, which is a year. And then we're going to go into advanced, and this is where we can do the before and after, right? So we're going to go ahead and add Hiking Club 2020, and then remove 2020. Anything after this 2020, we're going to have, so just remove this here really quick. There we go. And then all rights reserved, we're going to leave this towards the end. Oops. Go ahead and click on that there if I can. And then we're going to go to remove this. And after, we're going to go ahead and add this. There we go. So, and then we can even add a period here. I believe, can we do that or no? Let's see if we can. No, we can't. Okay. So we don't need to do that part. That's fine. We don't got to add a period there. We can just leave it at that for now. And then we can try to add, let's see, we need to actually add a spacing here. Okay, perfect. Let's remove the spacing. Oh, no, that one just add the spacing there. Okay. All right. So now we have that all set up, and that's something that I see a lot of people do. And I definitely would recommend that you go ahead and fix that issue. Definitely see it quite a bit, just to be able to do it. It's really simple. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this here. I'm going to go back to my dashboard here. We're going to go into, so you have two ways of doing this. You can do it within your theme editor. Please make sure that you have a child theme, because whenever you update your website, that code is probably going to be erased. I have a child theme. I'm currently using the Hello Elementor child theme. There's tons of videos on this. Just search it up on YouTube if you don't know how to set this up. Okay, so first we can go into the theme editor and just make sure you have a child theme, just like I mentioned. you can go into your theme functions and then just paste this code, which I will have down in the description. If I have it here, open this up here. I saved it on here somewhere. All right. And I'm just going to copy this. I'm actually going to, there we go. So I'm going to grab this code here. And I'm going to go back in here and you're just going to paste it. Let me go to remove this actually. Then let me open this up. All right. And then go ahead and paste this down here and then click update. And that will work for us as well. Now, if you don't have a child theme for some odd reason and you just want to get that fixed right away, I would suggest installing this plugin. It's called Code Snippets. I'll show you guys how it looks like. Let me just pop it up here. View details. There we go. This is how it looks like, Code Snippets. And then you can go into Snippets, go into Add New, go ahead and name it whatever you want, year, copyright, or whatever. I'm not going to name it entirely. Paste your code. Run snippet everywhere. You want to run it everywhere because, you know, you also, actually, you only want to run it in the front end. So only run it in the front end. Click on this, only run the front end, and then click Save Changes, and you're all set. Okay, and then from there, all we have to do is go back in here. And then I already added it to my theme, so I'm fine. And then we just need to do some brackets here. And then in between this, we write year. Now, it's not going to show up right here, obviously, but it will show up at the front. So let me go ahead and scroll down, and there we have it, 2021, and we even have that period in case. I know that we weren't able to do that with that, but I honestly didn't look too into it with just doing it with the pro version. I'm sure you can do it as well, adding the period there. Now, that's pretty much it for this video. It was a pretty long video, and it did take me a lot of time and a lot of effort. So if you guys did find this video helpful, make sure to squash the like button for the YouTube algorithm. And if you guys haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. So like I mentioned, I will have an Elementor responsive course out soon, so look out for that. Now, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.